My husband had his arm around her waist, and she leaned against his shoulder, wearing a smug smile. The caption was just 2 words: surprise? She thought I would break down, cry, or grab her by the hair. I didn't. Instead, I carefully selected 9 photos, added a caption, and posted them on Instagram. Then, I turned off my phone and slept soundly. The next morning, when I powered it back on, there were 156 missed calls. From my husband, my best friend, and both sets of parents. They were panicking, but I smiled. My body clock woke me promptly at 7. A sliver of grayish light seeped through the curtains, casting a cold, lonely hue over the bedroom. I didn't linger in bed. Calmly, I got up, my bare feet meeting the cool wooden floor as I walked into the bathroom. The mirror reflected a pale face, my eyes as hollow as dried-up wells. I spent 20 minutes meticulously completing my entire morning routine, washing, skincare, every step executed with precision, as if it were a sacred ritual. With flawless makeup and impeccable attire, I was still the perfect Mrs. Reed, Claire Bennett. Only then did I pick up the phone I had ruthlessly abandoned the night before. Holding down the power button, the screen lit up, and instantly, a flood of notifications poured in like a breached dam. 156 missed calls. Hundreds of iMessages. The phone vibrated incessantly in my palm, buzzing with a desperate, almost hysterical energy. The corner of my lips curled into a cold, involuntary smile. First, I tapped on Ethan Reed's voice messages. He tried to suppress his anger, but his voice still betrayed his fury. Claire, have you lost your mind? What are you trying to do? Delete it now. Do you have any idea how much damage this will cause? You've humiliated me. Pick up the phone. Answer me. His demands sounded less like a husband and more like a creditor caught in a lie, lashing out in shame. I swiped past them expressionlessly and opened Jessica Moore's messages. As expected, it was her signature tearful act. Claire, you've misunderstood. It's not what you think. We just had too much to drink. Ethan was only helping me because I couldn't stand steadily. Please delete the Instagram post. People will get the wrong idea. It doesn't matter what happens to me, but I don't want to affect your relationship with Ethan. Her voice was soft as cotton, but every word was a poisoned needle. What a brilliant performance. I could almost picture her now, tear-stained and pitiful. The most vicious message came from my mother-in-law. No voice note, just lines of shocking text. Claire, you shameless woman. You've disgraced the Reed family. Air your marital problems for everyone to see. Are you afraid people won't know you can't even control your own husband? Delete it immediately, then come here and apologize to my face. Reading these curses, for a moment, my heart felt gripped by an icy hand. I thought of the past 5 years, how I had honored them. Claire, I've always thought there was something off about the two of them. Attached below the message was a photo. The image was blurry, the lighting dim, but 2 familiar figures were still recognizable, walking one after the other into a hotel. The date of the photo was 3 months ago. That day, Ethan told me he was going to Portland for a 2-day out-of-state training conference. Turns out the so-called training was spending a cozy night in a hotel with my best friend. My fingers tapped lightly on the screen. Thanks. I replied calmly, then saved the picture. Just then, the doorbell rang violently, urgent and rough, as if trying to tear the door down. I didn't need to guess who it was. Ignoring it, I put on my Bluetooth headphones, blocking out the noise. Soothing classical music flowed into my ears as I opened the browser and slowly typed a line into the search bar. Asterisk the best divorce lawyers in Seattle. Asterisk the persistent noise outside finally stopped. Instead, there was the sound of a key turning in the lock. Ethan had used the spare key to open the door. He stormed in like an enraged bull, his face flushed with anger, eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled, and his suit jacket crumpled over his arm. Claire. His roar echoed through the empty living room. I was sitting at the dining table, leisurely finishing the last sip of milk from my cup. Hearing his voice, I didn't even turn around, just calmly picked up a napkin and dabbed the corner of my mouth. What the hell are you doing? He rushed over to me, leaning forward with both hands on the table, towering over me. Delete that Instagram post now. I looked up, calmly meeting his anger-distorted face. What did I do? My voice was soft, like a feather, yet carried the weight of 1,000 pounds. I was just sharing my life. Sharing your life? Ethan laughed as if he'd heard the biggest joke, raising his voice. You call this sharing your life? You're trying to ruin me. He reached out, trying to snatch my phone from the table. I shifted slightly, easily dodging his hand, and casually held the phone in my palm. His hand fell empty, and he pointed angrily at my face. You're insane. Claire, you're an unreasonable lunatic. He began hurling accusations, shifting all the blame onto me as if I were the one who had betrayed him. I watched his pathetic performance coldly until he finally ran out of words. Last Wednesday, you told me you were going to an out-of-state city for a 2-day financial training organized by your company. I spoke slowly, enunciating every word clearly, but I checked your company's schedule. That day's training was only for the sales department. The hotel you stayed at was room 1808, Marriott Portland downtown. And you were there with Jessica. My voice wasn't loud, but it hit Ethan like a sledgehammer. His face instantly turned pale, a flicker of panic flashing in his eyes. His lips trembled, but no words came out. In the dead silence, his phone rang, ill-timed and piercing, shattering the frozen air. I glanced at his phone screen on the hallway table, where the caller ID clearly displayed 2 words, *Jessica, such an intimate name. I tilted my chin toward him, signaling him to answer. Go ahead. Ethan froze, then rushed over as if burned, frantically silencing the call. That action spoke louder than any excuse. Just then, the front door was flung open again. My in-laws stormed in like 2 avenging spirits. My mother-in-law's face was twisted with rage, heading straight for me as soon as she entered. It was a disgraceful conversation. Jessica, Ethan, when are you going to divorce that woman? Ethan, soon, my dear. Ethan instinctively held her, murmuring words of comfort. The scene was utterly ironic. Watching them, I felt a wave of nausea churning in my stomach. Su Qing's performance didn't stir the slightest emotion in me. I simply swiped calmly through my phone screen. Don't rush. The real show is just beginning. I spoke softly, and the living room TV screen switched to a new display. In my Instagram 9-photo post, aside from the first intimate picture, the remaining 8 were clearly laid out before them. The first photo showed a comparison of 2 shopping receipts. On the left was the gift Ethan gave me for our anniversary last month, a simple brand-name necklace priced at $120. On the right was the luxury bag he bought for Jessica just 3 days later, with a receipt showing $5,500. The second photo was a side-by-side selfie comparison. In different settings and at different times, they wore matching couples bracelets in different colors, smiling brightly at the camera. The third photo was a screenshot of a company team-building event location. 2 weeks ago, Ethan's company organized a team-building trip to the suburbs, but he told me he had to work overtime. Yet, his phone's location showed him at a coastal resort hotel thousands of miles away. And once again, Jessica was with him. Photo after photo, scene after scene, each was undeniable proof of their betrayal. Ethan's face had turned completely pale, and Jessica's sobbing abruptly stopped. She stiffened in Ethan's arms, not daring to look up. My father-in-law's expression grew increasingly stern, his brows furrowed tightly. As for my mother-in-law, her initial anger had shifted to shock and disbelief. I revealed the final and most significant piece of evidence. It was a screenshot of a bank transfer receipt. The sending account was the joint savings account Ethan and I shared. The receiving account was Jessica's personal account. The transfer amount, $75,000. The transfer date, just 1 month ago. Seeing the clear figure, $75,000. My father-in-law jolted violently, exclaiming, Isn't this the money we set aside for the investment account? His words ignited the room. My mother-in-law seemed to have all the strength drained from her in an instant, collapsing onto the sofa, muttering to herself, $75,000. $75,000. Jessica could no longer keep up the act. She pulled away from Ethan's embrace, her face pale as she stammered. No, Mr. Reed, Mrs. Reed, this money was just a loan from Ethan. I'll pay it back. A loan? I let out a cold laugh, perhaps the first genuine laugh I'd managed all day. Using marital assets, without my consent, to lend $75,000 to his mistress? Jessica, do you think we're fools? I no longer looked at any of them. From the bag beside me, I pulled out several printed documents and tossed them onto the coffee table in front of them. Black and white, the title glaringly obvious. Divorce agreement. My voice was quiet, yet it fell like a judge's gavel, sealing the outcome of this farce. The division of marital assets is all outlined here, including this $75,000, which constitutes unauthorized transfer of marital assets and must be fully recovered. Ethan, you will forfeit your share of the house and the majority of the joint assets. As my words hung in the air, the living room seemed to freeze. The first to react was my mother-in-law. The shock of the $75,000 clearly hit her harder than the revelation of her son's infidelity. She sprang from the couch like a lioness pushed to her limit, no longer shouting at me, but charging toward Jessica. Homewrecker. You money-grabbing homewrecker. Give me back my money. She grabbed Jessica's hair and began tearing at it wildly. Jessica screamed and dodged, plunging the room into chaos. Seeing this, Ethan instinctively rushed forward, shoving his mother aside and shielding Jessica behind him.
Mom.
What are you doing? Let's talk this through. His reflexive action shattered his mother's last shred of composure. You're protecting her? Ethan, are you choosing this woman over your own mother? She wailed, pounding her fists against her son. Ethan's father, slightly calmer, pulled Ethan, who was still defending Jessica, into a corner. Lowering his voice, his face etched with anxiety and calculation, he hissed, Have you lost your mind? Is this the time for this? What about the $75,000? And the divorce? Their whispers reached my ears, sounding utterly vile. Amid the chaos, only Jessica, her hair disheveled from the struggle, lifted her head, glaring at me with pure venom. All pretense of fragility and innocence had vanished from her eyes, replaced by naked hatred and resentment, as if I were the executioner who had destroyed her world. I had no interest in watching this dog-eat-dog spectacle any longer. My phone vibrated softly. A new message from an unknown number. Ms. Bennett, this is Daniel Brooks. I'm in the cafe downstairs. Daniel, the top-tier lawyer I'd selected from my search results. A sense of calm settled over me, and I lost all interest in the drama unfolding before me. I stood up and picked up my bag. My lawyer is here, I announced calmly. He will represent me in formally discussing the details of the divorce and asset division. With that, I turned and walked away without a second glance at this toxic household. Claire, stop. Ethan tried to block my path. Let her go, his father barked sharply. We need to deal with the mess at hand first. I didn't look back as I stepped into the elevator. The metal doors slid shut, cutting off the noise behind me. Inside the enclosed space, another message arrived. From Jessica. You think you've won? Claire, let me tell you, I have something that could ruin your family's reputation. The threat and madness in her words were unmistakable. Reading the message, a cold, mocking smile touched my lips. Empty bluster. Without hesitation, I dragged her number into the block list. The elevator reached the ground floor, and the doors opened. Bright sunlight streamed in. I took a deep breath and stepped out. This war had only just fired its first shot. Downstairs in the cafe, the light was soft, and the air rich with the aroma of coffee. By the window sat a man. He wore a well-tailored dark suit and gold-rimmed glasses, his attention focused on the laptop before him. Even in profile, he exuded a calm, professional elite demeanor. As if sensing my gaze, he looked up. Seeing me, he rose and gave a polite nod. Ms. Bennett, hello. I'm Daniel. When I finished, he opened the folder and examined the evidence, piece by piece. His gaze lingered on the transfer receipt for $75,000. The timing of this transfer is quite interesting, he remarked, tapping the date on the receipt. It's exactly 3 days after Ethan received the first payment for a major project he was leading. A realization stirred within me. I hadn't noticed that before. What are you implying? Daniel adjusted his glasses, his eyes sharp and analytical behind the lenses. Genuine marital gifts are rarely round sums like $75,000, especially with such coincidental timing. I suggest Ms. Bennett not rush into filing for divorce just yet. We should first investigate the true purpose and destination of that money. His words struck like a bolt of lightning, cutting through my chaotic thoughts. I had always assumed it was just Ethan splurging to please his mistress. What are you implying, Mr. Brooks? This might not just be a gift, Daniel said, his voice lowered. It could even involve Ethan's conduct at the company, for instance, using Jessica's account for some less than compliant operations. I understood instantly. If Daniel's speculation was true, the nature of this matter would escalate from a family dispute to an entirely different level. Ethan's Achilles heel would no longer be just infidelity. I agree with your approach, I said without hesitation. We'll stay quiet for now and investigate discreetly. Good. Daniel nodded, approving of my decisiveness. He then helped me analyze my current financial situation. The house under your name was fully paid for by your parents before your marriage, making it your personal premarital asset. Ethan has no right to claim it. You have a solid chain of evidence and the upper hand in public opinion. With the right strategy, we can not only make him relinquish his claim to the house and most of the shared assets, but also recover all your losses. Listening to his clear and logical analysis, the heavy stone that had been weighing on my heart finally settled. After our conversation, as I walked out of the cafe, I felt an unprecedented sense of relief and strength. The sky was still the same, but my world had changed. Instead of heading home, I drove to my parents' house. My mother opened the door, her eyes reddening the moment she saw me. Claire. My father emerged from the study, his expression grave, but his gaze resolute. They had clearly already heard about the situation from relatives and friends. There was no blame. As I was about to leave, my father suddenly called me back. After a moment of hesitation, he spoke. Claire, Ethan's father used some rather unscrupulous methods in business years ago. Although he's toned it down over the years, a cornered dog will still jump over the wall. Be careful in everything you do. I nodded, taking my father's warning to heart. The peace lasted only 2 days. Ethan and Jessica's counterattack came faster and more insidiously than I had imagined. On Wednesday morning, I was summoned to my department head's office with a phone call. Claire, take a look at this. My department head's expression was grim as he pushed a tablet toward me. On the screen was the preliminary proposal for a critical project I was overseeing. It had been published by a well-known industry newsletter under the headline, XX Company's core proposal suspected of leakage, major internal management flaws. I had only shared this proposal with one person, Ethan. To pressure me, he was willing to harm my company's interests. Mr. Wilson, this is due to my family situation. I don't want explanations, my department head interrupted. I just need to know if you can handle this. You know better than I do how important this project is to the company. His tone carried disappointment and a warning. As I left the office, I felt the entire department's eyes on me, filled with judgment, attacked from all sides. Meanwhile, Jessica was also busy. She spread carefully crafted rumors across various university alumni groups and mutual friend circles. She portrayed herself as a victim, long oppressed by the legal wife, betrayed by a close friend, and finally finding true love. She even fabricated chat logs between me and unfamiliar men, depicting me as someone who had long been unfaithful and promiscuous. Twisting the truth was her specialty. Even more suffocating was my mother-in-law's phone call. She no longer cursed, but adopted a tone of feigned concern. Claire, couples fight and make up. Can't you, just for the sake of our past relationship, stop making a scene? Family scandals shouldn't be aired in public. If you keep making this known to everyone, how will our family's reputation survive? She never mentioned the $75,000 or Jessica, only using family reputation to guilt-trip me. Hanging up the phone, I felt as if the entire world was filled with malice, pressing down on me until I could hardly breathe. Career, reputation, family, 3 mountains crushing down on me at once. Just then, Ethan's call came through. "Claire, we need to talk." His voice sounded weary, yet carried a condescending, almost patronizing tone. "If you agree to the divorce terms I proposed, I'll have them retract the article." Just one glance at his proposal told me how absurd it was. We'd split the house equity 50-50, the savings 70-30, with him taking the 70%, and he made no mention of the $75,000 at all. He thought he could force me to compromise by threatening my career. I didn't reply. I simply hung up. Grabbing my car keys, I headed out. I needed to see Daniel. But just as I reached the door, my mother called, her voice choked with suppressed sobs. "Claire." Ethan's parents. They showed up at her house. "Your father started arguing with them. You need to." A burst of chaotic shouting came through the phone before the call cut off. In that moment, I felt all the strength drain from my body. It seemed the whole world was against me, using every means possible to drag me back into that quagmire. I leaned against the cold door, utterly exhausted.
My phone rang again.
Assuming it was another call pressuring me, I almost hung up without looking. But the name flashing on the screen, Daniel, made me pause. I took a deep breath and answered. "Claire, don't panic." Daniel's voice, steady and firm as ever, came through like a shot of adrenaline straight into my frayed nerves. I found out that $75,000 wasn't for Jessica. It was transferred through Jessica's account to a distant relative of hers who works as a department head in the project approval office. Ethan's project involves serious bid rigging and illicit benefits. The news hit me like a thunderbolt, exploding in my mind. Suddenly, everything became clear. The hand I held was much stronger than I'd realized. Strong enough to ruin Ethan completely. Strength returned to my stiffened body. The suffocating pressure closing in from all sides was torn open by the information from Daniel's call. Leaning against the wall, I took a deep breath, forcing my chaotic mind to calm down. First, address the work crisis. I walked straight into my department head's office and placed my phone on his desk. "Mr. Wilson, I admit that the leaked proposal was a despicable move by my ex-husband, Ethan, to threaten me during our divorce. I didn't shift the blame. Instead, I chose honesty. However, what he leaked was only the initial draft I showed you 3 days ago. I opened my work email and displayed the optimized version I'd revised overnight and just submitted to his inbox. This updated version restructures and upgrades several key data models from the original, improving effectiveness by at least 15%. My professional competence won't be compromised by personal turmoil." The department head looked at me, his expression shifting from initial scrutiny to surprise, and finally to a hint of approval. After a moment of silence, he nodded. "All right, I understand. You can go." He chose to trust my professionalism and integrity. Leaving the office, I immediately texted Daniel, asking him to send me the email for Ethan's company's ethics and compliance department. Then, using my personal email, I drafted a whistleblower report. In it, I detailed all the information Daniel had uncovered, the flow of the $75,000, the position of Jessica's relative, and the suspicious circumstances around Ethan's project bid. But I didn't hit send. Instead, I took a screenshot of the draft. The image clearly showed the email subject, real name report regarding project manager Ethan's suspected bid rigging and illicit benefits, and the glaring recipient address, the Ethics and Compliance Department's email. I sent that screenshot directly to Ethan. A minute later, my phone started ringing incessantly. It was Ethan. I didn't answer. He called again and again. I let it ring until it stopped on its own. Then, his messages flooded in, filled with unprecedented panic and desperation. "Claire, I was wrong. Don't do anything rash. Let's talk this through. I'll give you whatever you want. Please, I'm begging you, don't send it." I looked at the messages, my expression unmoved. I waited until his fourth call came through before calmly answering. On the other end was his voice, frantic, furious, and pleading. Claire, what do you want? First, I began coldly. Contact your self-media friend immediately and have all articles about my company's projects deleted, along with a public apology. Second, tell your so-called friends to clarify the facts in all the groups where they spread rumors about me and restore my reputation. Third, have your parents get out of my house right now. Can't do it? I paused, a hint of icy amusement in my voice. No problem. With just a tap of my finger, we can enjoy the fireworks together. I'll do it. I'll do it right now. Ethan's voice was filled with terror, almost shouting his agreement. From the other end of the line came the sounds of him frantically getting dressed and making calls. I calmly hung up. Within half an hour, Jessica posted a rambling apology in the class group chat, calling it all a misunderstanding. The self-media account also deleted the article and issued a lukewarm apology letter. When I returned home, the house had returned to silence. There were no traces of the earlier argument on the floor, as if nothing had ever happened. I sat alone on the spacious living room sofa. Sunlight streamed in through the window, but I felt no warmth. For the first time, I truly tasted the flavor of revenge. It was a cold, blood-tinged satisfaction. Ethan's retreat was clearly not part of Jessica's plan. Unwilling to accept defeat, she decided to take a desperate risk and step into the fray herself. She contacted a gossip blog known for sensationalism and spun an even more exaggerated, tearful version of the story about how the scorned wife framed her innocent best friend. To lend credibility, she even released a carefully doctored, intimate photo. In the photo, a woman who looked strikingly like me was behaving intimately with a man whose face was unclear, under dim lighting. This vivid report soon began circulating in certain circles. Though no names were mentioned, all the descriptions pointed directly at me. In no time, I became this scheming scorned wife in people's conversations. When Ethan saw the report, he was terrified. His greatest fear now was that the situation would escalate and he'd get burned. He rushed to Jessica's place, and they had a fierce argument. Their alliance, faced with significant conflicting interests, developed its first deep crack. But they both underestimated the speed of my retaliation. Or rather, they underestimated Daniel's professionalism. The moment the report surfaced, Daniel's team sprang into action. In less than 3 hours, they identified the stranger in the photo. He wasn't a stranger at all. He was a colleague from our company's tech department, surnamed. Daniel even found several colleagues who were present that night and secured their commitment to testify. The evidence was irrefutable. Daniel gave them no chance to catch their breath. He immediately sent a sternly worded legal letter in my name to both the gossip blog and Jessica herself. The letter accused them of malicious defamation, fabricating facts, and seriously violating my personal reputation rights. Jessica probably thought I'd react like most women, crying, making a scene, or engaging in online arguments. She never expected such a swift, professional, and lethal counterstrike. The moment she received the legal letter, she panicked completely. The gossip blog reacted even faster. Within half an hour of receiving the letter, they deleted the article entirely and posted a formal apology on their official social media account. For these fair-weather friends, indifference was the best response. My world needed a thorough cleanup. Ethan was utterly terrified. The company's investigation hung over his head like the sword of Damocles, and Jessica's frenzied counterattack had nearly dragged him into the fire. All he wanted now was to cut ties with me as quickly as possible and contain the damage within the smallest possible scope. Behind Jessica's back, he arranged to meet me privately once again. The location was the same cafe, where he sat across from me, looking haggard with heavy dark circles under his eyes. "Claire, I agree to the divorce terms you proposed earlier," he said hoarsely, his voice tinged with resignation. "I'll give up the house and most of the shared assets."
I don't want anything.
I picked up the glass of lemon water in front of me, took a small sip, and let out a derisive laugh. "Ethan, do you really think everything can go according to your timing? That you can attack when you want and make peace when you feel like it?" I set the glass down, leaning slightly forward to meet his gaze. It's too late for that. The price has changed. Ethan's face instantly darkened. What do you mean? It's simple, I said, holding up two fingers. First, the $75,000 must be returned in full. Second, you'll pay an additional $150,000 in compensation for emotional and reputational damages. $150,000? Ethan nearly jumped out of his seat, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Claire, this is extortion. You can call it that if you want. I shrugged indifferently. Or you can refuse and wait for my report to land in your company's ethics and compliance system. I stood up, pretending to leave. Your choice. Wait. Ethan grabbed my wrist weakly, his palms slick with cold sweat. Claire, I'm begging you. I really don't have $150,000. Seeing my unmoved expression, his eyes flickered as if he'd made a desperate decision. Jessica, the reason she got close to me in the first place was because she claimed to know a secret about your family. I stopped in my tracks, my heart sinking. She said that if this secret got out, it would be enough to shame your parents in front of all their relatives and friends. Ethan stared intently at my reaction, trying to find any hint of vulnerability on my face. He wanted to use this so-called secret as a bargaining chip to force me into submission. My heart did skip a beat. My father's earlier warning and the fleeting unease in my mother's voice when she spoke of the past suddenly connected in my mind. But I didn't let it show. In moments like these, losing composure was the last thing I could afford. This could very well be a trap set by Ethan and Jessica to manipulate me. I looked at him coldly, my eyes filled with scorn. Ethan, you've sunk even lower. Using vague threats like this to intimidate me, don't you find it pathetic? I shook off his hand, my tone leaving no room for argument. My terms won't change. $150,000, not a cent less. You have 3 days to decide. With that, I turned and left the cafe without looking back. Back home, I sat on the sofa, my mind unsettled. I dialed my mother's number. On one side, he faced my demand for $150,000 in compensation. On the other, he had to deal with Jessica, a ticking time bomb ready to explode at any moment. And just as he was drowning in chaos, his company's internal investigation officially began. He was suspended. This news was the final straw for Ethan's parents. They finally realized that this was no longer a simple marital dispute, but a catastrophe that could truly ruin their son's future. They were utterly panicked. On Saturday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find my once arrogant in-laws standing there, laden with gifts, their faces plastered with humble, ingratiating smiles. Claire. My mother-in-law's voice broke as soon as she spoke, tears welling in her eyes. She grabbed my hand, sobbing and apologizing through her tears. Seeing that their emotional plea had failed, my father-in-law stepped forward, rubbing his hands together, his expression calculating. Claire, we'll pay the $150,000, he said. We're willing to compensate you on behalf of that scoundrel. All we ask is that you show some mercy and not escalate this beyond the company. Give him a way out. As I looked at their ugly expressions, I remembered how kind and amiable they had seemed when I first met them 5 years ago. It turned out all their warmth had been nothing but a facade built on self-interest. I'll take the money, I told them clearly, but Ethan must also face the consequences of his actions. My stance shattered their last shred of hope. Just as they were about to say more, my phone rang. It was Daniel. I answered the call right in front of them. Claire, I have some good news, Daniel said, his voice tinged with relief. Based on the evidence we uncovered, the relevant authorities have stepped in. Jessica's distant relative, the one in charge of the approval department, was taken away for investigation this afternoon. Every word from the call felt like a hammer striking my in-laws' hearts. I watched as their faces turned deathly pale. They knew it was all over. The storm came swiftly and fiercely. Ethan was formally dismissed from the company due to serious professional misconduct. Not only that, the company's legal team filed a civil lawsuit against him, demanding compensation for the project losses and reputational damage caused by his actions. His life had plummeted from the clouds into the abyss. Jessica didn't escape unscathed either. After her distant relative was investigated, she, as a key link in the chain of interests, was implicated as well. Though her actions didn't warrant criminal charges, she lost her job, her reputation in the industry was ruined, and she could no longer find a foothold there. The two former lovers had now become bitter enemies. In a heated argument, Ethan shifted all the blame onto Jessica, calling her a jinx who had destroyed his life. Jessica fired back, without holding back. The two ended up brawling in the street outside their old, cheap apartment, and the video was recorded and spread online, turning them into a laughingstock on local social media. I saw the video the day after I received the $150,000 compensation from my in-laws. I watched it calmly for a moment before closing it. Their fate had been sealed long ago. With Daniel's support, I smoothly completed all the divorce procedures. As I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, the sun was shining brightly, and I felt an unprecedented sense of liberation. I returned to what was once my home and logged into my social media account for the last time. I took screenshots of the $75,000 bank transfer notification and the proof of the additional $75,000 compensation payment, combining them into a single image. Then, I posted my final Instagram update. The caption read only 2 words, settled. After posting, I blocked and deleted Ethan, Jessica, my former in-laws, and everyone who had once taken their side. Every single one of them. The next day, I contacted a secondhand luxury goods dealer and sold all the bags and jewelry Ethan had given me over the years. What had once symbolized love now felt like nothing more than a pile of lies. With the money from the sale, along with my savings and the compensation, I rented a studio in a cultural and creative industrial park I'd long admired. Finally, I could pursue the dream my marriage had delayed for 5 years. Daniel, as my legal advisor, provided invaluable professional help with the studio lease and contract negotiations. To express my gratitude, I invited him to dinner the evening the studio was set up. At the restaurant, we raised our glasses. Congratulations, Claire. Daniel looked at me, genuine warmth in his eyes behind his glasses. A whole new life awaits. I met his gaze and smiled. Thank you, too, Mr. Brooks. Outside the window, the city, lights glittered. I felt a sense of freedom and renewal like never before. Yes, my life was truly just beginning.